Stampers, this is Jackie Ross, your Stampin' Up demonstrator from Plano, Texas. And today I'm going to share with you another technique using the glossy cardstock. I love using the glossy cardstock. It gives your inks so much more vibrant color because that cardstock is less porous, so that the ink kind of sits on the top and it just is just more colorful. So we are going to use the Lift Me Up stamp set, the Oh My Stars embossing folder, and then this is the card that we're going to be making. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm actually going to start off with my stamping so that it will have time to dry on the ink pad. So my cardstock is, this is Bermuda Bay, and the measurement for this is 3 3/4 by 2 1/2. And the measurement for our white glossy cardstock is 3 1/2 by 2 1/4. So I've got my stamp here, and I did actually color it in earlier with my markers and then stamp it off, because I find that it kind of has that way if you missed a little piece with your markers the first time round, when you color again for the second time, you're going to get more coverage. So the markers I'm using, these are the Stampin' Right markers. They come in color families. This is the Brights collection, and I'm using Bermuda Bay, Melon Mambo, and Daffodil Delight. One of the things I wanted to point out with our markers is, I don't know if you can see on the marker here, that you actually have two lines, because the markers are dual tipped. So the thin line here is for the skinny tip that you might want to write, or for detail coloring. And then the other end is your thicker line, and that is your brush tip, mainly for coloring in or for coloring directly on your stamps. So this is another technique where instead of having to stamp your balloon all in one color, we're going to take the image and use several colors on one stamp. So I'm just going to take the brush tip of the marker, and I'm just coloring in the top half of the balloon here. So these are the great thing about these markers. They are washable, which means they will clean off your stamp afterwards. But it means you can add color to your stamp, your rubber stamp, wherever you want to. You don't have to do it all in one, take it and put it into one color of ink pad. So we're doing the Bermuda Bay. Oh, and actually we're going to have Bermuda Bay down on this piece. Then we're going to use our Melon Mambo. We're just going to color straight across here, being careful not to touch the other colors. If you should touch the other color, I usually keep a Q-tip on hand, and that way you can take off the ink and just replace it with the color of ink that it's supposed to be. So because these are washable markers, they're water-based, which means that first piece of color that I added may have dried. So before I actually stamp it, I'm going to breathe heavily on it and then stamp. Now when you stamp, you want to make sure that it doesn't slip. And now look, see, can you see how bright those colors are? I'm actually going to put that aside for a few minutes so that can be drying while I bring in my big shot. Our yellow Daffodil Delight cardstock is 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, and then it's scored at 4 1/4. And I'm going to take the embossing folder. Hey, one of the tips with the embossing folders is that you have, it's a bit like a belly button. You kind of have an innie and an outie on the embossing folders, where it pushes the cardstock up to make the impression. So if you go by where it says Stampin' Up and the Sizzix, if you want the raised side to be on the front, then you need the words to be showing on the front. So I'm going to slide that onto half of the card. Place that here on my big shot. I've got my basic platform with one clear plate. Then goes my cardstock in the folder, which has moved a little bit. And then my other plate. And then I'm just going to run that through. Move that out of the way. And now I've got my cardstock with these raised stars. And of course it also looks cute. You could also do it with the negative side as well. In fact, I'm going to do it on the negative side, and then I can put the two cards side by side, the one I did earlier, and you can see the difference. So actually every embossing folder is like having two embossing folders. So I'm going to place that. I've done that. I'm going to put that out of the way. My next thing to do is find my, okay, I'm going to do a tag with the sentiment using the banner, what is it? The banner punch. So I'm going to take my cardstock here, which is also the shiny cardstock, and it's 1 inch. Doesn't matter how long it is, because we're just going to put it in here and stamp it, punch it out to give us our nice even tag. That way you haven't got to do that thing with the scissors where you keep trying to find it and you can't manage to get it even. We're using Memento ink and the words sending smiles across the miles. And I'm going to stamp it on this end. Okay. No, I'm going to end up stamping it upside down. And again, because, oh, that's not very good, but fortunately I have one that I did earlier. All right, so I'm going to bring that one in. By now, my ink here should be dry. So I'm going to use the polka dot tool, which is one of our new ribbons for 2018. And again, I like to leave my ribbon on the roll when I'm tying ribbons, or, you know, tying bows, or applying it to a card. That way I don't have to cut off too much and then waste some. I only use the amount that I need to use. Okay. Seem to have too many fingers and thumbs today. So we're just going to do that flat knot, trim the edges just a little bit, and then attach this to our Bermuda Bay cardstock. Again, if you just press it here and then turn it over to press it down, if the ink is still a little bit wet, you're not going to smear it with your fingers. I'm going to go back to our card here, turn this over, and place some dimensionals on the back. When you're placing your dimensionals on the back, move them in. If you scoot them in a little bit from the edge, it means you won't see them from the side of the card. And when you scoot them in, it saves you having to put that extra one in there. So we're going to take these off the back. Apply this to the front of the card. And then here's our tag that we did earlier. So we're just going to put a little bit of tape on the back of here and slip it under here. Real simple card, fun technique. Let me bring in the one I made earlier. And I don't know if you can see if I put them, I'm trying to get them in the camera. Maybe that's good. Can you see the difference with the embossed and the debossed side? I'm not sure which one I like best. I think I like this one best, the way it's supposed to. I don't know. Well, anyway, thank you again for joining me today. If you would like more information, or if you would like to purchase either of these any of these products, you can go to JackieRoss.stampinup.net, or please follow me on my blog, JackieRossStamps.com. Thanks. Happy stamping.